Some places take you by surprise. And for me, or more accurately for us, New Haven, Connecticut is one of those places. Welcome back to Wherever We End Up, a place where we talk about where we go, the things we do to get there, and what it feels like along the way. My name's Kat, and look, sometimes I'm solo, sometimes with friends, but always on the move. So today, I want to talk to you about New Haven, Connecticut. This is one of those places that we ended up, and here's the thing. I recently took a trip with my husband, Russ. It was our 20-year anniversary, and he was like, let's go to the Northeast. This is where we're both from. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So we planned a trip. We wanted to do a few different things, go a few different places. It was like 5 days, 3 states, drove between them, of course, and stopped, did a bunch of things along the way. But as we did all of these things, some of them were kind of by happenstance. We just kind of threw them onto the itinerary. Some of them were a little bit more intentional. Man, we had just a fantastic time. But we also, it was a very eye-opening trip as well. We learned a lot. Some of those things I want to share with you. And so I want to do that. I want to do that today. And we're breaking things down, of course, by destination, because so much happened at each of the places that we stopped. And the first, which was the entirety of day one, was New Haven, Connecticut. Now, we didn't end up in New Haven because we really wanted to go to New Haven, Connecticut. The long and short of it is we like pizza and have heard a lot about New Haven style pizza. If you've heard anything about One Bite pizza reviews, if you've ever watched One Bite pizza reviews, Dave Portnoy, you may have heard about New Haven style. It's like his preference for pizza. But, it's far from his preference only. A lot of people like New Haven style pizza, but we haven't had it. Or maybe we have, but haven't realized it. So we figured, you know what? We're going up north, going to hit up a few different places, and we might as well, instead of doing this big loop, which was our original plan, we might as well start in one place and drive all the way up to our final destination. So that's what we did. And we started in New Haven. We flew into Hartford and then drove about an hour south, I think, to New Haven, Connecticut. The goal was simple. We're going to get some pizza from... We wanted to do 2 places. It was very ambitious, but also I wanted to stop in another place as well. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But this was the whole plan. The whole plan was to go get some pizza. That's it. And then basically start on our journey. So we booked a hotel not far from where we wanted to be. And it was a great price. And figured this is where our journey is going to begin. I will say the hotel was fantastic. Just before we move on to any other discussion about our stay, I booked a place called the New Haven Hotel, very appropriately and creatively named. It's right in the middle of it all, walking distance from everything that we wanted to do. It was fantastic. Price was, I can't complain at all. The price was great. And the amenities were just great, nice, clean hotel, feels good, looks good. I enjoyed our room at the New Haven Hotel, and the proximity, again, unbeatable. Downside, for those of you who might be thinking maybe we should book that hotel, downside was the parking was very tight. We had just a sedan. What were we driving? It wasn't an Elantra. But nonetheless, it felt like we were driving a full-size truck, just with the size of the parking structure. Obviously, this is in the middle of the city, so there's not a lot of moving room. It's still doable, but something a little bit more compact would have been more ideal. Thank goodness we didn't spring for something bigger. But just something to keep in mind if you're interested in this. Anyway, so like I said, we made our way down to New Haven, Connecticut because of pizza. And the thing that really took me by surprise is just how much more there was to do there in New Haven. Because I don't know about you, but when I think about New Haven, Connecticut, I don't really think about like, wow, there's so much going on. You know about the pizza, maybe you know about some other historical context, but it's like, okay, it's a place on the map. So we, like I mentioned, made our way down, and it was our travel day. So of course we knew we were going to be tired. We had an early flight. I think we got in at like 10 a.m. Our flight took off at like 6 or 7 a.m. So it was an early morning flight, which I prefer. I know that that's not everyone's style, but I like to have a whole day wherever it is that I'm going, especially if I don't have a huge long trip, It's nice to really get the most out of your day. Anyway, so but we knew that pizza and burgers was not going to be enough to fill an entire day, even though we were planning to get to New Haven around noon, 1 o'clock. So we started doing this thing that we like to call like adding a little bit of fluff to our itinerary. Now, I've talked a little bit about building itineraries before. If you're interested, I will have links in the description or information. You can go on over to our YouTube channel. We do have a YouTube channel, by the way, not only for this podcast, but I also have a separate YouTube channel. We do other travel related stuff. I'll put a link to that video so you can get a sense of what we do when we build an itinerary if you're interested. But I like to have a plan. I like to keep it flexible, and that's what we did for this trip. We had like the things that we wanted to knock out, but just in case we found ourselves with some extra time, we wanted to add some fluff to that itinerary, some things that would be options available to us if we had time to spare. So we started doing that. We started looking around, seeing what's available in the area. We didn't want to do a ton of venturing out, but we did want to see what else we could do. And we quickly stumbled upon something that initially was brushed off, not just by me, but also by my husband, because he was like, what does that matter? Like, okay, that's cool, but like, what are we going to do there? And it ended up being one of the most interesting things that we did, maybe throughout the entire trip. And that was visit Yale University. Now, if you're listening, you're thinking to yourself, oh yeah, Yale is in New Haven, Connecticut. That's pretty neat, but what exactly is there to do? Then you're not alone, because that's exactly what I was thinking when we first stumbled upon the fact that Yale was here. I was like, oh, okay, Yale, a university, an old university, a prestigious university. What about it, But I quickly learned that Yale was just overflowing with stuff to do. And I mean, even now, as I sit here looking at my notes, thinking about what it is that we accomplished. Oh my goodness, did you just hear my tummy grumble? Sorry about that. I should have a snack, but I don't have one with me right now. We have other things to talk about. It's all this pizza talk. Anyway, so we start looking. We see Yale. At first, we brush it off entirely. And we were like, why would we even stop in there? But as we got like right down to the wire, it was like the day before our flight to Connecticut. We were excited, kind of hyped up for our trip, and we started looking into a little bit more, and Yale came up again. And this time, rather than brushing it off, both of us kind of got excited about it. We were like, let's dig in a little bit more. And that's what we did. We found a video on YouTube by a woman who didn't get nearly as many views as she ought to have, by the way. If I can find the video again, I will also pop a link in the description box down below. But she just kind of took us around and showed us not only some architecture, but told us about some of the things that were available at Yale for free. And it's funny because I know that universities have things that you can just go and do, but it didn't really occur to me how, I don't even know, what word do I want to use here? How fulfilling an experience that could be, especially when we're talking about a big prestigious university like Yale. So as it turns out, Yale University, which is walking distance from everything that we wanted to do. It's walking distance from some of the most iconic pizza places in New Haven, Connecticut. It's walking distance from our hotel, the New Haven Hotel. And of course, there are other things going on in New Haven, but that's just what we were focused on. There is so much going on at Yale University. First and foremost, they have a welcome center. We didn't visit it, but you can. Apparently there you can get information on like self-guiding walking tours or self-guided walking tours. I want to say that they also have other tours available. Check into that if that's something that you're interested in. But the campus itself is gorgeous. Let's start there. The architecture is just amazing. I could have wandered around Yale University all day, not going in one building, not seeing one thing, not doing anything else in New Haven, and just taking in the beauty of the space. It's absolutely gorgeous. A lovely place to visit. Definitely worth it. Just for that alone. I mean, it feels in some ways like you're visiting Hogwarts or something. I know that that's a silly reference, okay? But seriously, in some sections, you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is the cafeteria, you know? But there are also other places that you can visit and you can really take advantage of during your visit, again, for free. There's multiple libraries that you can check out. There's some exhibits in the libraries themselves. They have art exhibits. They also have art galleries, I should say. And they also have, and this is the thing that really took us by surprise, the Peabody Museum of Natural History. So of course we started getting excited. It was the day before our trip. We were excited anyway, but we're seeing all this stuff and we're like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. Not to mention they have a cemetery there that has some very notable figures. So we were like, okay, we have to check this out. So we prioritized a few things that we wanted to see. For us, that included the rare books library. I mean, I anticipated that this was going to be cool, okay? But I had no idea that it was going to be as cool as it is. But the thing that got me in the door is that it had a copy of a Gutenberg Bible, a complete copy. Amazing just to be able to be in the presence of this book, let alone all of the other incredibly rare books and manuscripts that are in this space. And even if you don't care about the books, the architecture of this building is just absolutely gorgeous. I actually made an entire video on this as well, where I talked a little bit about just kind of what got me interested in seeing the Gutenberg Bible to begin with. Again, links, I'll have them so that you can check that out if you want to learn a little bit more. But the long and short of it is, I grew up going to Walt Disney World, a theme park, and I know some of you are going to cringe, maybe you'll roll your eyes, I don't care. But it's where my family went. We weren't a family of travelers. We weren't a family of people who went long distances, far off. We were very habitual. We went to Disney World annually or whatever, as often as we could. Now I live in the Orlando area. I go there regularly enough. But in the theme parks, one of the theme parks at the Walt Disney World Resort was my favorite, and it kind of gave me this taste for wanderlust, and it like lit the fire of my interest in doing what I basically do now. Go places, do things, and tell people about it, And one of the attractions features this. It features this Bible, just in passing, but I just, you learn about it, think, oh, that's cool. And the idea that I could go see it, it just felt like a full circle moment to me. So I was like, well, let's go, put that at the top of the list of things that we could do. And then so many other things in there were just absolutely amazing. Just being able to be in, like I said, in the presence of all those amazing works of art and literature is something else. But after that, the top priority for both of us was to go over to the Peabody Museum of Natural History, which is something that, I love museums anyway, but they can be hit or miss, okay? Sometimes you go to a museum, you pay $60 to get in, which is something that we've done fairly recently and been incredibly disappointed in. And then, it's broken down, it's in rough shape, and you're like, why did we pay all this money to get in here? And I know it's like the money goes to a good place or whatever, but you still want a good experience. So I was really itching for that type of experience. I was itching for something that felt fulfilling. And I mean, with a price tag at $0, how could you argue with that? So we made our way over there. It was a little bit of a walk from the Rare Books Library. I think it was like a mile or something, which wasn't a long distance if you hadn't been walking and traveling all day. But by the end of it, I will say that I was feeling a little bit worn out. But man, was it worth the trip. First of all, again, walking along the streets of the campus was just amazing. Seeing all the architecture, which you just continue to take in every single time you turn a corner, But the museum was fantastic. Now, I will say this museum, it was recently renovated. I want to say it was expanded and opened to the public in 2024 with more exhibits and more space and everything like that. So if you have heard of the Peabody Museum of Natural History, you haven't been in a while, I think it's worth another trip. But man, no matter what you're interested in, this museum has something for you. And oh my goodness, is it just so impressive. They had an entire section for dinosaurs, an entire section for gems, and then there was currently there's something running for I don't know the exact name of the exhibit, but it's like the Pacific Islanders history or something to that effect. There's a whole section of that. There was Egyptian history. So much to see and do in this museum. And I will say, because we were only here for one day, we were trying to knock out so many things. Honestly, it was like half a day. We're trying to knock out so many things on very little sleep. I will say that we didn't really take in as much of it as I would like to. But man, was it great. It really was a fantastic experience, and just going through every floor, seeing as much of all the exhibits as we could. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I want to go back, which is, in my opinion, the sign of a fantastic trip. But, yeah, again, Peabody Museum and the Rare Books Library, both really, really interesting places that we focused our attention on. There was, of course, a lot that we skipped just because of time and energy. The art galleries, I definitely wanted to check out. There were two of them, at least. Two that I was aware of at the time. One for British art, if I remember correctly. And then there was another art gallery entirely. We didn't make it to either of those. And then the cemetery is one of those things that again, at the time, we kind of walked by the front of it and we're like, oh, that's cool. But I didn't have an opportunity to look into these things and figure out why we might want to go check out the cemetery before we visited. So we breezed past. But man, there were some really interesting names who were laid to rest in that cemetery. So I would definitely love to go back, pay my respects to some of those people who did things that, I think a lot of us might take for granted today. So that's added to the list for the next time that we visit New Haven, Connecticut. But I will say, just Yale alone was so impressive. And then there was another New Haven museum that was tucked in there somewhere, and we didn't get to that either because, again, timing, energy, all of that. But here's what else we did get to, because we'll revisit this whole concept of visiting Yale and whatnot here in a minute. We also got our pizza, which was the whole reason for visiting. We also got a cheeseburger. So I keep mentioning cheeseburgers. You might be wondering, what the hell I'm talking about. So in New Haven, Connecticut, there's this place called Louie's Lunch. You may have heard of it before. It pops up every now and again on like History Channel stuff, Food Network stuff, I suppose. It's the birthplace of the hamburger, at least according to the Library of Congress here in the United States. So it's this little food cart, or at least it originated as a food cart. As the story goes, one day the guy, Louis, who ran the food cart was met by a customer who was like, I need something quick. I need it now so I can eat it on the go. He slapped a patty made of ground, clippings or scraps and put it between two pieces of toast and sent the guy on his way, and the hamburger was born as far as anyone was concerned. I've heard about this place forever, and I've never had a chance to go because I never had a reason to be in New Haven. But as it turns out, we were in New Haven for pizza, so I was like, we're going to grab lunch at Louie's Lunch. We got ourselves a classic cheeseburger and some potato salad. Let me tell you, this is one of those places that is I just think they are so special because they are stuck in time. They do things the way that they do them. They don't like pull any punches, anything like that. They're just what they are. Very small menu, friendly people, very tight quarters because it's not a big place, Now I will say this, it's not the original location. It was originally located down the road and it was originally like a food cart, but it eventually expanded to a brick building. And then because of the same things that we're dealing with today, urban sprawl and all of that, it got moved to its current location, but it is stuck in time, I'll tell you that. Such an interesting history with this place. It really was cool to just step inside. But having a burger here, while it might not necessarily seem like the most impressive thing to some, especially some who like their like gourmet burgers or whatever, it really is like eating a piece of history. Because not only are you eating a burger that was cooked on the same grills from the 1800s, yes, the same broilers, I should say, from the 1800s. You get a chance to see them because they are right there. But it's also the same like recipe and owned by the same family still, which I think is so cool, so impressive, definitely worth visiting. And, just saying you did, quite frankly. But you know what else is worth visiting? Also historic in nature are the pizza places in Little Italy here in New Haven. So there is this rich history of pizza in New Haven, Connecticut. It's called a Beats. A pizza is how it's spelled, all one word, but pronounced a Beats. And it's been around forever, as far as I'm concerned. And man, there's such a long history and a story of families opening up their own pizza place. I'm not going to go into all of it here because I'm sure I'm going to mess some of it up, but it is just such a classic story of immigrants coming to a place, sharing their culture with a little bit of a twist to it, and it becoming a bigger thing and defining a place, which is exactly what I think a Beats in New Haven, Connecticut is. Now, there are a few different places that you can get New Haven style pizza in Connecticut, or I should say in New Haven. Sally's, I think Modern, and Frank Pepe's. Frank Pepe's came first. Then I want to say it was Sally's. I don't know exactly where Modern fits into there. Forgive me for not having all of that information locked and loaded for you, but we're chatting, we're having a conversation. We originally wanted to get pizza from Frank Pepe's, which is like right down the road from Sally's. Unfortunately, there were a few things going against us here. Number one, by the time dinner rolled around, we were running on fumes. But also, another thing, it was Friday night, so that didn't help. But another thing to be aware of, if you're going to do this, is that if you want to sit in-house, you want to eat there, you have a wait on your hands. And we saw that. We saw that firsthand when we rolled up to Sally's. Now, we opted to order online, which is an option. They have a pickup window. I highly recommend, especially if you're tight on time or if you're just not in the mood to like wait and then wait again. We did do some research ahead of time on grabbing food from Sally's and Frank Pepe's. Long wait at both places, as you might imagine. Both are very popular, and it's a college town, and I mean, it's good pizza. A little bit of a spoiler alert there. Not that you need to hear it from me because everyone talks about how good these pizza places are. But one of the things that we saw specifically with Sally's, which was on the top of our list of places to visit, is that, you could be waiting like an hour outside, but then you need to expect to wait around the same amount of time once you're seated as well. So this is a big to do if you want to have this experience. I've heard this from multiple different sources, but again, as we were digging into some of the research, looking at some reviews and just trying to get a sense of what to expect for this experience, we definitely saw that like this one couple had said, for example, that they waited about an hour and a half outside and then another hour and a half to get their pizza. And that was too much for us on this particular day, especially because we wanted to try and get 2 pizzas, which turned out to be too much. We went and ordered online, like I mentioned, really easy, grabbed our pizza and honestly ate it while we walked back to the hotel, stopping every now and again to sit down on a bench. This worked out really nicely for us. It was quick. It was easy. Was the pizza as good as it would have been if we had sat down? Probably not, but it was still really good. I mean, I can't argue with that. It did get cold pretty quick because it was cold outside during our visit. But again, I can't argue with that. We just kept eating slices on the walk back, and we're both as happy as either of us could be, quite frankly. We never ended up going to Frank Pepe's. Timing just didn't work out for us. We were ready to call it, so we added that again to the list of places that we'd like to visit next time. It is what it is. But also, you make these decisions when you're traveling. You decide like where your limits are, what you're willing to do, and then you kind of build a trip off of that or around that, which I think is a good call. You never want to be too stretched too thin when you're traveling. And sometimes you end up like starting a trip, starting a day, like this one was a travel day, knowing that you're going to get stretched thin, but then you have to just set those limits, set those boundaries, and decide what it is that you want to do, But yeah, so we had gone to New Haven, got our pizza, got our burgers, ended up going to Yale. And I gotta say, while we had a fantastic trip, we'll talk more about other legs of our trip in the future. This day actually kind of stole the show. And I wasn't expecting that to be the case. Because again, we were here just for pizza, just for burgers. Yale was a bonus that turned out to be pretty amazing. But it ended up being so much more than we expected, which was a pleasant surprise. And now, all we can think about, in fact, as we like wrapped up our day and got ready to head out on our next leg of this journey, all we could talk about was coming back. All we could talk about was how much time do we need to do this again and see all the things that we may have missed, or devote a little bit more time to the Rare Books Library or to the Natural History Museum, which for me feels like, again, the mark of a fantastic trip. And that kind of brings me to like the takeaway. When I sit down and think about this and think about just how all of this went, this one day alone, it really is it's such a good illustration of this thing that I talk about all the time. It doesn't really matter how you go or why you go, I should say, as long as you go and then you're open-minded so that you can see what else might be around you. This really is a perfect illustration of that because, we set out going to this place for pizza and burgers. Again, I know I keep saying that, pizza and burgers, but these are 2 things that most people would overlook because to them, these are things we can do at home. These are things that we can get anywhere. Why would I go to a place to have this thing that is utterly average? But it's not the same here as it is everywhere. And you'll never know it if you don't allow yourself to look and experience it. You might never know the history of this food in this place, and you might never experience how different this food is from place to place if you just brush it off as something that you can get from home. And this is something that I see all over the place. In fact, it's also something that I mention when we talk about international travel. I know you're going to laugh at me and you're going to go, this is ridiculous, but it's so true. It's like this fundamental part of travel that people always overlook. And it's just figuring out what you're interested in and experiencing that thing regardless what other people have to say. You know, if eating McDonald's in every country that you can get to is the thing that gets you to that country, go eat the McDonald's in that country. And you know what's funny? When you get there, you're going to realize, as someone who has lived overseas, by the way, and eaten at McDonald's overseas, you're going to realize that it's a reflection of that place, even though it seems utterly uninteresting, super basic, because we can get that at home. But I digress. We'll have to dig more into that some other day. But, you know, it's a major takeaway for me that it doesn't matter how you get to a place or why you go to that place, just as long as you get there. And it's the thing that I wish more people embraced when they travel. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future, because I do think that we could sit down and discuss that for a minute, right? Like, it just seems like something worth talking about. But another thing I wanted to tell you about, because I knew this, but also didn't embrace the idea as much as I probably should have when we first learned that Yale was going to be walking distance from where it was that we were staying and all the things that we were doing in New Haven, is that universities, they have stuff to offer, even if you're not attending that university, even if you're not attending that college. And while we often don't think about them as destinations, because they're not full destinations, right? Not really, kind of, I guess. They are worth looking into. And I do think that if you happen to find yourself in a place like New Haven, you hear that Yale is around, you're in Boston, you hear that Harvard is up that way, maybe see what they got going on. Maybe see what they got going on and see what it takes to visit those places, because you know what? We spent absolutely no money visiting Yale University. Everything is free and open to the public over there, or at least there's a long list of things that are free and open to the public, I should say. And it was incredibly fulfilling. We have paid so much more for so much less. So especially if you're one of those people who's like, how on earth are we going to do this on such a tight budget? This might be how. This might be one of the ways that you can do that. And I will say, since returning back from Yale or New Haven and doing all the things that we did at Yale, I have looked into what's available at some other universities in the areas that I am going to be in or around, some areas that are nearby me, and they also have something similar. Of course they do. So definitely worth making note of and keeping track of, and just realizing that the limits aren't necessarily set, Your limitations don't mean that you can't do anything. It just means that what you can do might be a little bit different from what you were expecting, and that might actually be cooler than you realize. Man, like I said, such a big takeaway from day one of this 5-day trip that we did. But that's it. That is our first day. I will say, like, a little bit of a crossover into day 2. Hotel, again, great. Enjoyed staying there. We'll probably stay there again next time we're in New Haven. But we didn't do anything beyond that. Oh, hold on. I should stop and say, The hotel was great, and we probably will stay there again, but if you're interested in hearing a little bit like of a review side of things, I did think that it was a little bit weird the next morning. There was a little bit of a disconnect between like some of the perks that we were supposed to have and what was paid, and there was a little bit of confusion with the front desk. Everyone was very friendly, everything worked out, everything was fine. That's why I still describe it as great, but it was a little bit like weird, I suppose you could say. Like, we got tickets for free coffee because we booked through a third-party website, and that was like the VIP experience in air quotes there. But then it was like coffee was supposed to be $3, but also it was free. It was one of those things. It was one of those things that I think was a perk to bolster the experience while also not really being a perk, a non-perk perk. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, so yeah, that was our first day of this trip. I can't wait to tell you about some of the other legs of the trip because they are really interesting. We'll save that for another day. For now, like I said, just it doesn't matter how or why you get wherever it is that you're going. Figure out what's interesting to you and then use that as the motivation to go to a place. You can always expand out from there. And you might be surprised. You might be surprised what something as simple as pizza, that thing that you can get at home, leads you to. What it makes apparent to you that you might have missed otherwise. But, that's all for now. I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you hanging out and hearing what I have to say about New Haven. If you've ever visited New Haven, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, so go ahead and share that with us. But wherever you are, I hope you find yourself somewhere worth going. We'll see you next time.